Initially, Sheikh Isa said today we will have a host of experts talking on several topics. I don't want to be modest, but actually everybody who is speaking is an expert on his topic except me. I'm a health actuary, has nothing to do with pensions. But the subject of defined benefit and defined contribution points were hot, and they have received tremendous feedback from our last conference. And one of our trustees who delivered a paper in our last conference gave me the liberty to use most of his paper to put together a new paper so we can use it today. So actually most of the work that is done today by me is actually done by Curtis Huntington, which the paper was delivered earlier. To start, the defined benefit and defined contributions, to eliminate any ambiguity, defined benefits, usually people refer to them as pension plans, and defined contributions, people refer to them either as provident funds or normal life insurance policies. No? So if we just go step by step and talk about defined benefits are plans. Usually the benefits are defined at the outset, so it's not really very ingenious why they are called as such. So the benefits are defined at the outset, and usually they are function of salary and function of years of service or years of contributions into the plan. So we shouldn't really talk about the years of service as much as the years of contribution into the plan. Moreover, usually in defined benefit plans, the benefits are independent of the asset value. That means, this is what we spoke earlier about, the risk is borne by somebody else, and I will come to that later on. And moreover, the contribution of the defined benefit plans primarily are borne by the employer, but we do see in many cases the employee does contribute into these plans. In the defined contribution plans, it is very much to the opposite. The contributions are set at the outset. A person says, I will contribute 2% of my salary. He is not limiting how much he is going to get. He is saying, I will contribute $100 per month. So the contributions are defined at the outset. And usually the benefits are very much function or reliant on the asset value of the plan. It's completely the opposite of the defined benefit plans. Moreover, usually the employer matches the contribution of the employee, but to a ceiling. So an employer will say, if you put 2% into this plan, I will put 2%. If you put 5%, I will put 5%. However, if you put 10%, I will only contribute 5%. Usually the employer limits his contribution up to a particular ceiling. Let's talk about the differences between the two plans. I think we have put the different presentation. But okay, no problem. No problem. Okay, yes. So we'll talk about the differences. We'll cover flexibilities, the demographic and investment risks, financial status, advantages to the employees between the two, and advantages to employers between the two. Let's address flexibilities. Defined benefit plans, or DB plans as they are known, are very rigid. Usually they are not really there to be very flexible. You cannot go and design a plan and address to everybody's need. So usually DB plans are known to be rigid, whereby DC plans usually are individually customized. A person can choose the investment vehicle he would like to use. It is portable. It moves from one employer to another if he's moving employment. And he can decide also the level of the contribution, top-ups, and increase his contribution. So this is the flexibility level. Then we talk about demographic and investment risks. DB plans, the sponsor of the plan usually take the risk. So if the investments returns are not high, it does not affect the beneficiary. It is the plan sponsor or the employer, if in this case, is assumed the risk. And also in the demographic changes, the sponsor of the plan take the risk. So whether people are living longer, the mortality table that is used does not penalizes the beneficiary himself, whereby in DC plans, the beneficiary assume the risk of both the investment side as well as the demographic side. So in the DC plans, if a person thinking that he is going to live only 10 years after he cashes in his benefits and assume he does not go and buy a life annuity, but rather decide to take an annuity certain, decide to cash in the benefit as he goes along, he will pay the risk if he live longer. And of course, it is affected of the investment returns as well. The financial status of the two plans, the DB plans usually is open liability plan, open-ended liability. The employer or the sponsor of the plan must make sure that the plan is funded, he meets the future liability. So technically speaking, he doesn't know at any one moment of time what is his liability. Although there are actuarial reviews and reports, but this is all with assumptions. But as he goes along, the plan has a liability year in, year out. On the other hand, the DC plans are fully funded. A person knows at any one time what he has in the kitty, what he has saved is what his obligation. So technically speaking, DC plans are fully funded plans. On the employees level, we directly realized that really from the discussions and the question that Mr. Saleh, our Omani colleague, asked Chris, what does he favor? Of course, you can tell that on DP plans, it is very, very advantageous to employees. Because on the DT plans, usually it's, especially if benefits are indexed to inflation, you get immunity on that. And there is the employer himself or the sponsor of the plan assume both risks of the investment and the demography, as well as usually it's designed to keep staff. So people that tends to like to stay in one employment, they have a big benefit in the DB plans. On DC plans, on the other hand, the employee himself will feel great. He has control of the assets. He decides whether he will buy from Merrill Lynch or he'll buy directly from a private insurance company. He decides on the vehicle of the asset he would like to use. DC plans also, he creates a capital, working capital. Many people, we realize, in their working years would like to accumulate funds so as after 10, 20, 30 years, they will have a new fund to start a new career if they want, actually a new business if they like. And it's very advantageous for employees that jump around from one employer to another. If we look to the employers in the DB plans act and become a major player on the social activities because they create big funds, and these funds becomes big investors in the community, in the economic of the area. And moreover, they will have a major role in the employees' retention, how to retain their own staff. And many people refer to pension plans as retention plans as well. DC plans, on the other hand, it's more for the employers, they like to run Provident funds because it's stable, they don't have this open-ended liability in the funding, and it is very easy to administer. Moreover, they shift the risk of the investment to the employee. Again, Saleh asked, what are the trends? What's happening in favoring DC plans? Why everybody is moving in DC plans? Technically speaking, although there is a lot of incentives to favor DC plans, but not the DC plans, the conventional DC plans that are known, which we'll come to speak about right now, which are a hybrid plan, نسيج جديد, a new type of plan which is crossbreed between defined benefit and defined contribution. So the trends that are favoring DC plans, because we have highly mobile society, we are having more and more part-time people, we are having more and more self-employed people. And so far, for the past couple decades, the investment market has been very, very good. And people are greedy by nature. They can do better. They could easily be seduced or convinced by financial advisors that, oh, we can give you 12 or 18% return on your money. And people get attracted very much by life insurance salesmen, try to selling them private pension plans or private provident funds. So this is the reasons why people are looking at DC plans, are not because DC plans are better, but by nature, individual people are becoming more and more individualistic mentality, not social mentality. If we are to allow DC plans, I believe the state have to play a bigger role. It is very dangerous, in my view, to have encouragement to these plans without having proper regulations and supervision. Because usually, if you have DC plans, it means we have financial institutions providing these vehicles to these individuals. The state have the obligation to regulate these financial institutions, whether they are life insurance companies or investment houses, providing these vehicles for the population. Moreover, and this is one of the reasons of this conference, for example, is awareness and knowledge. In these 2 days, we are talking about general information about Social Security, about pension. But there should be much more awareness in the country, in any country, about the benefits provided through Social Security, so people can measure whether they are well protected or not. A person can measure his individual needs, and then he will decide when a new life insurance salesman tries to hustle him into a new life policy, whether he really needs that life policy or not. Does he need that savings, yes or not? There are many cases whereby, let's say in Bahrain, an individual GOSI is more than enough for him, whereby his colleague may need extra protection, may need extra savings, because each individual has different needs. The only way a person can have that decision if he is informed and he's aware of the investments and the needs. Last, in provident funds, if they are going to survive, there should be some kind of a guarantee or protection the government have to provide if there is a capital crash, if there is a major disaster in the investment market. Because if you remember, we said that the investment risk in DC plans is borne by the beneficiary of the plan, by the employee himself, by the individual. That means, although he is happy or he may be very happy in a bull market when the returns are very well, of course the state will not provide should not provide any protection in a different performance. If performance was not 18%, was 2% or 3% or negative. But I believe the government must play a role if there is a major crash in the market, because really it means it has hit the individual beyond his choice of the investment vehicle he chose. Now what is coming up these days? What's coming up right now is a breed of a new generation of plans, which is what we refer to them as hybrid plans. And these plans are bringing the gap between defined benefit plans and defined contribution plans more and more. So the differences are becoming less, and whereby the defined benefit plans are becoming more flexible. How can a defined benefit plan becomes more flexible? Is by changing, for example, the accrual rate that is used over the years. For example, for people who are working the first 5 years of their life or contributing into the plan, they get an accrual rate of 1, where the second 5 years is 1.5, and so on and so forth. So there are mechanisms to make the defined benefit plan a little bit more flexible. And also, we can provide the defined contribution plan with a little bit more guarantees, whereby a typical example, to provide a capital guarantee or a minimum return on the capital. So such plans can make the two different plans a little bit closer in characteristics. And one very important thing I go back to is the state regulations. If the state plays a role in regulating and supervising provident funds and defined contribution plans, as we call them, by that nature, that plan becomes a little bit more conservative. By that nature, it becomes, although beside the guaranteeing in case there is a capital crash, by that nature, that defined contribution plan will have certain comfort to the policyholder or the investor. So the combination is, like Chris mentioned earlier, it is not really what the World Bank have said or the ILO is preaching. There should be really a level whereby in every country the defined benefit plans or the social security plans play a role, whereby the provident fund plans play another role. Usually, as the income of the individual increases, the role of the state becomes less. As the income of the individual decreases, the role of the state becomes more. Now, what is the ratios between that? That is a particular issue in each and every case. Can we skip that one? Okay. Again, you can tell that this slide is directly taken from Curtis's presentation. And I made sure to put his name on it because I would like him to take responsibility of the findings, because I don't know if these are true or wrong. But he did a comparison between cash balances and the defined plan. And the cash balances is an offshoot of a defined contribution plan, is one of the hybrid plans of the defined contribution plans. And he will say, in the cash balances plans, people who are in their 20s are winners. People who are in defined benefit plans in their 20s are losers. Why? Benefits same, regardless of age service. On the other hand, when he goes to the people on the 40s, they become losers in the cash benefit plans, and they are winners in the defined benefit plans. By the way, if anybody have questions on this slide, I think it should be directed to Chris later on in the discussions. And so on and so forth. Though I'm not going to go through on this because it was inserted by George Psaras, it was not inserted by me. Now, usually we are used to rely on somebody else in everything we do, especially in the Arab world. Our reliance is very big on Allah. In this particular incident, I did use his name because really we can only rely on Allah for our health and our wisdom to take decisions. We cannot really rely on Allah for anything else. So this is where I started. Then the state comes directly after, where the states have to provide us security and provide its people welfare, so we don't have people on the streets without any, becomes liability or menace. Then the employer, because we need entrepreneurs to create jobs for us, so we need employers to provide us opportunities, and employers also, it would be nice if they will have loyalty towards their staff the way they expect loyalty from their staff to the employer, to provide stability. Last but not least, if we are going to go into defined contribution plans, I would like the wisdom that Allah have given us will provide us some knowledge to choose, and then we will not be greedy by just going one way or another, but using the wisdom that we are given. The question is there an ideal solution? This was said earlier that there is probably no ideal solution. However, there is a trend for hybrid plans to answer some of the needs, and different people will put a little bit more weight on the defined benefit, some people will put more weight on defined contribution, and then they will see how we go from here. I would like to conclude my paper, since we just touch on a subject that there is no ideal answer, or there is no one single answer. And being Lebanese myself, I took the liberty to take a quotation from Gibran when he says, "Say not I have found the truth, but rather I have found a truth," because I think there are many solutions, there is not one ideal solution. Thank you very much.